Where do injured horses go? I don't know. Where do injured horses go? To hospital. Just kidding. They shoot 'em, really. We've got one seriously hard-working and dependable gentleman for you this week. The Knight of Pentacles has got to be the most solid character in the tarot. If you're in a bind and you need a helping hand, this is the guy to call. In the Key to the Tarot, A.E.WAITE says he rides a slow, enduring, heavy horse to which his own aspect corresponds. He exhibits his symbol but does not look therein. So slow and steady wins the race with this knight. We see him sat astride an enormous looking mount. That's got to be a Shire horse. Apparently the biggest horse ever recorded was a Shire horse called Samson, who stood at 7 feet 2. I'm 6 feet 2, so that's a full foot taller than me. I'd need a ladder to get on him. Anyway, the point is that he's massive, slow and solid, and that's a pretty good description of the knight that sat on him. Now this is another of the knight cards where we get some tension, as the knights are naturally predisposed to movement and action. We certainly see that on the wands and the swords. This is because the elements of fire and air are considered to be active, while water and earth are thought of as passive. So the Knights of Cups and Earth are pretty mellow, just kind of sitting there watching the grass grow. We're talking about slow and steady progress, but progress nonetheless, so that could be a bit of a hare and tortoise situation. However, this can work against his natural tendencies and lead to some restlessness. Some commentators have mentioned that the way he looks over the top of his pentacle illustrates that he's entirely focused on the practical and has cut himself off from the deeper aspects of the element. POLLACK says the knight's responsibility for action brings out the suit's practical qualities. At the same time, denying the knight's natural penchant for adventure tends to distort and narrow his attitude to life. However, I think the overarching theme of this card is one of solid dependability. Slow but sure would be a good way to describe this knight. We've talked a lot about patience and persistence in this suit, in particular the 7 of Pentacles, and this is certainly one of those cards. I think that in the modern era we've got used to instant gratification and we want everything yesterday, but that's not how everything works. Recently I finally got myself back into the gym after a long break. As I'm getting older I'm thinking a bit more about my health and fitness. Now obviously I'm not trying to become Arnold Schwarzenegger or anything like that, but I am looking out for any changes to my physique, and it's really easy to fall into the trap of getting frustrated because you're not seeing those changes straight away. I'm trying to focus instead on the process. I've said before in other videos that we tend to feel much better after an hour in the gym than we do after sitting on the couch eating biscuits and mindlessly scrolling through the Netflix menu, and I'm trying to take that as the reward. An oak tree is a good example of this kind of thing. They take decades to fully grow, but they're one of the strongest and most resilient trees. When we take our time to achieve something, we build solid foundations, just as an oak tree spreads its roots into the earth. Author Louis Sachar once said, "It is better to take many small steps in the right direction than to make a great leap forward only to stumble backward." Wow, the Thoth card is wow. So I've talked many times about how the Waite Smith and the Thoth decks have got different naming conventions. Waite went with kings, queens, knights and pages, while Crowley went for knights, queens, princes and princesses. Now I think Lady Frida Harris's Prince of Discs is absolutely stunning. Crowley says the figure of the Prince of Discs is meditative. He's the element of earth become intelligible. Clothed in light armour, his helmet is crowned with the head of a bull, and his chariot is drawn by an ox, this animal being particularly sacred to the element of earth. So the bull is obviously a big feature of this card, and that ties in with the astrological correspondence that we'll get to later, but it's fair to say that the element of earth is illustrated throughout. Crowley goes on to talk about how the prince is someone who makes things materialise on the physical plane, and again mentions the great work, the culmination of our spiritual path. He says in his right hand he bears an orb sceptre surmounted by a cross, a symbol of the great work accomplished, for it is his function to bring forth from the material of the element that vegetation which is the sustenance of the spirit itself. Lon Duquette talks about how Harris almost had a nervous breakdown when she was painting this one, and how in a letter to Crowley she described him as a devil. He says, "A devil indeed, but what a devil! I don't think it's a good idea to put too many princes of discs in the same room. These fellows change the world." The Sforza and Marseille cards reliably give us what we would expect. The Sforza in particular is quite close to the Waite Smith card, with a mounted knight gazing over the top of his coin. I do feel quite bad for the way that horse has been squeezed in though. Poor thing hasn't got room to change his mind. The Solar Busker Knight is rearing up over his coin and looks like he might be giving his horse a little kiss on the cheek. Oh, how sweet. Oh man, will you always be like the savage who, when he has dinner, throws away what remains by anticipating the supplies of the evening? Eh? What did he just call me? A savage, and I'll be honest, I'm with him on this one.
The Hermetic title for the Knight and Prince of Pentacles is Prince of the Chariot of Earth.
Now obviously the title of Prince of the Chariot of Earth fits really well with the Thoth card, but I think we get the same kind of message across all the different decks. Farming and agriculture is a big theme, and that ties in with the idea of manifesting things in the material plane. Sowing the seeds and ploughing the fields gives us some idea of why Pixie chose to illustrate the Waite Smith card with a Shire horse. Another title is Prince and Emperor of the Gnomes, so we've still got our little earth spirits hanging around. According to Swiss alchemist Paracelsus, gnomes are about 18 inches tall and move through the earth as easily as people move through the air.
I went on a date earlier. Ooh, how did it go? Terrible. I got held up in traffic and when I got there he walked out. He said I was too little too late. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. It's okay. I think I'm just gonna go home. That's it. Go and run yourself a nice hot sink.
The Knight and Prince of Pentacles corresponds to the zodiac signs Aries and Taurus.
So as with all the knights, queens and kings, we get 2 zodiac signs, and in this case that runs from 20 degrees Aries to 20 degrees Taurus. With all the chord cards we find the corresponding element of the suit is always the dominant sign, but we've also got a little bit of fire in there from Aries. This gives the knight his drive and ambition, but it's the earth sign of Taurus that makes up most of the correspondence, so that would be the practicality and stability that we can see on the card. When we put the two together, we get this sort of dogged determination that's characteristic of this one, and that can go either way. In understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot, Lomas comes up with a plethora of important historical characters who belong to this card. These range from William Shakespeare, Thomas Jefferson and Catherine the Great, all the way up to Adolf Hitler, Robert Oppenheimer and Saddam Hussein. I'm getting those blind force vibes again here, in the sense that we've got a powerful energy that can be used for good or evil. I think formidable would be a good way to describe that energy, and I can see why he says we probably shouldn't put too many of them in the same room.
The Knight of Pentacles resides in the world of Asiya and sits at the 6th Sephira of Tiferet, together with the 6 of Pentacles.
We're right back up to the Sunny Sephira for the Knight and Prince, and that brings us to the next character in Lon Marlowe Duquette's cosmic fairy tale. He says the young prince is the Vav in Yud-He Vav-He. He's a bright boy and organises a neatly ordered principality in Sephiroth 4 through 9. Here he compares the prince to our very own holy guardian angel. Is that like some kind of cosmic bodyguard? A brief history of the holy guardian angel. The holy guardian angel is a central concept in Western esoteric traditions, especially within Thelema and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. The angel represents the highest aspect of our being, our divine essence and connection to universal consciousness. It acts as a mediator between our earthly existence and the divine. This connection, often viewed as the pinnacle of spiritual attainment, leads to profound wisdom, guidance, and alignment with our true will. To achieve the knowledge and conversation of our holy guardian angel is considered to be one of the cornerstones of ritual magic. Structured rituals, like Abramelin's operation, from the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, are designed specifically for this purpose. It requires 6 months or more of seclusion and devotion to achieve communion. The knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel is ultimately about achieving alignment with our divine essence, embracing our true will, and walking a path of spiritual authenticity on a journey that is deeply personal and transformative. Lon talks about how the prince presides over the central area of the tree, but is removed from the material plane and the Sephira of Malkut, where the princess lives. He says the holy guardian angel stroke prince doesn't have any of the lowest of the low. He's stuck in cosmic middle management and passionately needs a little bit of the princess's divine DNA if he's ever going to clone himself back to being a king. So this is where our fairy tale prince and princess get it on, so the whole story can start again. He goes on to say one kiss from the princess is all it will take. He will then wake up and realise he's king, which will cause the princess to wake up more and realise she's his bride, the queen.
The Knight of Pentacles herb is Elecampane. This herb is also known as wild sunflower and is used by veterinarians to treat horse coughs.
Are you alright?
Yeah, I'm just a little horse.
But what does it all mean?
The Knight of Pentacles is a card of hard work and reliability. He may not be the most exciting knight in the deck, but he definitely gets things done. Waite says utility, serviceableness, interest, responsibility, rectitude, all on the normal and external plane. That last part about rectitude is a suggestion that this is someone who consistently does the right thing according to his values, but the main focus seems to be on diligence. Rachel Pollack says he's responsible, hard-working, uncomplaining. So we're talking about someone methodical and determined, willing to do the more laborious tasks in order to get what he wants. In this sense, the card can be telling you to keep going when you're feeling weary with something. Having lofty ambitions usually means there's going to be some grinding involved, and that can drain all your enthusiasm. The Knight can be telling you to stick with it. It reminds me of the phrase, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. He can also represent a very dependable person. Whether that's you or a friend or partner would depend on the context, but reliability is a big focus of this card. This can apply to work and relationships in equal measure. We're talking about someone you can count on. The practical qualities of the pentagrams really come to the fore here, not just getting things done but also taking the time to make sure they're done properly. Pollack goes on to say in his best sense he's deeply rooted in the outer world and to simplicity, a quality suggested by the way his horse stands firmly on the ground with its rider sitting upright. The Thoth card is almost a perfect description of the astrological correspondence. I talked earlier about how the prince is mostly connected to earthly Taurus, but with a little bit of fiery Aries in there too. He says the character denoted by this card is that of great energy brought to bear upon the most solid practical matters. He's energetic and enduring, a capable manager, a steadfast and persevering worker.
When the querent is an attractive young lady, it urges her to watch herself.
Plenty of attractive young ladies watching themselves on Instagram. Remember when people were putting pictures on dating sites with cute little animal ears and noses? You didn't know whether to take them out to dinner or down the park for a shit. When the Knight turns up reversed, it can mean becoming a little too solid. Waite says reversed, inertia, idleness, repose of that kind, stagnation, also placidity, discouragement, carelessness. So when he's upside down, he turns into a bit of a work-shy fop. We get some similarities to the Four of Cups here, in the sense that he's lost his drive and become discouraged with the world. Rachel Pollack says his steadiness slows down to the point of inertia. His plodding responsibility gives way to idleness. A mild personality, taken just a little too far, becomes weak and depressed. For the negative aspects of the Thoth card, Crowley suggests that the qualities of the prince don't change, but just become diminished. He says it is not very practicable to distinguish between the good and evil dignities of this card. One can merely say that in the case of his being ill-dignified, both the quality and quantity of his characteristics are somewhat degraded.
In the reverse, it indicates good opportunities.
Ooh, good.
That you will miss, however.
He keeps doing this. He gets me all excited for no reason. The big takeaway for the Knight of Cups is being solid, dependable, methodical, and making slow but steady progress towards a goal, whatever that goal is. It's so easy to fall into the trap of wanting everything right now, but when we put pressure on ourselves, we just get stressed out and we're more likely to give up. Small steps in the right direction, no matter how small, will always get you there in the end. Bruce Lee once said, long-term consistency beats short-term intensity.
Now there's a very solid-looking Shire horse. Bet he could pull a plough or two. May the coming days bring you dependability and a solid character. Until next time.